Every spring, you tear everything out and start from zero. New seeds, new seedlings, weeks under grow lights before anything touches soil, and by fall, it's gone, bare dirt again, waiting for next year's bill. But some gardens don't reset. They compound. Plant these 9 vegetables once, and they stop asking you to start over. Some come back thicker every spring. One plants itself, walking across your garden bed by bed. And one of these can outlive the person who planted it. If a garden that works without you sounds good, hit subscribe, because this is about to change how you grow food for life. We're starting with the one most people rip out by accident, thinking it's a weed. Number 1, asparagus, the spring crop that pays you back for 20 years. People have been growing asparagus for thousands of years, and it first took root in coastal soil near the sea, where salt and sand would kill almost anything else. That toughness never left the plant. It's part of why, once asparagus is established in your garden, it's almost impossible to get rid of. Here's what's actually happening underground. Asparagus grows from a crown, a thick cluster of roots and buds sitting just below the surface. For the first 2 years, that crown isn't trying to feed you at all. It's storing energy. Every fern that grows tall and feathery through summer is pulling in sunlight and sending sugar down into the crown, building reserves for next spring's spears. To plant it, you bury dormant crowns about 1 to 2 inches deep in soil that's been dug deep and loosened well. Asparagus hates sitting in wet ground. Soggy soil is the fastest way to rot the crown before it ever gets going. Here is the one critical detail. Once your harvest window ends in late spring, do not cut those ferns down. They look messy, but they're the plant's solar panels. They're what charges up next year's spears. Cut them early, and you'll get a weaker harvest every spring after. Asparagus grows well across USDA zones 3 through 8, which covers nearly the entire northern half of the country, from the upper Midwest down through the Mid-Atlantic. The downside? Patience. You won't get a real harvest until year 3, and even then it's only 2 to 3 weeks. But by year 4 or 5, that window stretches to 6 or 8 weeks, and keeps going for 2 decades or more after that. Next up is a plant where the part you eat is perfectly safe, but the part right next to it absolutely is not. Number 2, rhubarb, the stalk that outlasts the gardener who planted it. Rhubarb came out of cold, harsh climates, and it still behaves like it's bracing for winter even when it isn't. That's part of why it's one of the longest-lived plants on this list. A single crown can keep producing for a decade or more without ever being dug up and replaced. The way it grows is simple. Each spring, thick red and green stalks push up from a crown buried just under the soil. To harvest, you don't cut the stalks. You grab them low and pull, twisting gently as they come free. Cutting leaves an open wound on the crown, which becomes an open door for rot and fungus. Pulling seals itself almost instantly. Rhubarb wants fertile, well-drained soil, and it actually prefers cooler conditions. In hotter climates, give it some afternoon shade so it doesn't stall out completely once summer heat sets in. Here's the one critical detail. The leaves are toxic. They're loaded with oxalic acid, which can seriously damage your kidneys if eaten. Never cook with them, never feed them to animals. But here's the twist. They're completely safe to compost. Oxalic acid breaks down fast once the plant tissue is damaged, and within a few weeks in a compost pile, it's gone, leaving behind rich material you can put right back on your beds. Rhubarb thrives in USDA zones 3 through 8, basically anywhere that gets a real winter, which rhubarb actually needs to reset properly for the following season. The downside? You have to wait until year 2 to harvest at all, and even then, stop pulling stalks by mid-July. Push past that window, and you'll weaken the crown going into next year. Next is a plant that looks like a thistle, costs a small fortune at specialty grocers, and can quietly produce dozens of them for free in your own backyard. Number 3, globe artichoke, the grocery store luxury growing wild in your backyard. This plant has been prized in gardens for centuries, valued as much for how dramatic it looks as for what it produces. Each one grows into a massive silver-green clump, 4 to 6 feet wide, with deeply cut leaves that look more like something from a botanical garden than a vegetable patch. What you're actually harvesting are the flower buds, picked while they're still tightly closed. before they get any chance to open into the spiky purple flowers hiding underneath. One established plant can produce dozens of these buds in a single summer. Compare that to what specialty stores charge per artichoke, and the math on one plant gets very good, very fast. It needs full sun, deep soil, and consistent moisture. This is not a plant for dry corners or poor ground. Give it the space it wants, because crowding it stunts production fast. Here is the one critical detail. If you grow artichokes from seed, you'll get inconsistent plants. Some productive, some barely worth the space, and most won't stick around long. Instead, start from rooted suckers, or divisions taken off a plant that's already proven itself. You get a true copy of something you know works, and it establishes faster too. Globe artichokes are happiest in USDA zones 7 through 11, but gardeners as far north as Zone 5 can overwinter them successfully with a thick layer of straw mulch piled over the crown before frost hits. The downside? In colder zones, even protected plants may only last 3 to 5 years. Watch for aphids too. A strong blast from the hose across the flower scales usually clears them out before they take hold. Next is the plant everyone digs up by accident, thinking they found a weed right before it quietly takes over the entire bed. Number 4, sunchokes, the underground crop that multiplies whether you want it to or not. This one is native to North America, a relative of the sunflower, and it shows. By late summer, the plant can reach 6 to 10 feet tall, topped with bright yellow flowers. Long before any of this was a backyard crop, indigenous communities across the continent dug these tubers as a reliable source of food through the cold months, and the plant hasn't gotten any less reliable since. The real action happens underground, where it's quietly producing pounds of knobby tubers in soil most vegetables would refuse to grow in. Sunchokes thrive in poor, sandy, or clay soil with almost no fertilizer needed. In fact, rich, nitrogen-heavy soil works against you here. It pushes the plant to grow taller and leafier instead of putting that energy into tubers underground. Plant the tubers about 4 inches deep and roughly 12 to 18 inches apart, and let the soil do the rest. Here is the one critical detail. Don't dig these up until after the first hard frost. That cold snap converts the starches inside the tuber into sugars, and the difference in flavor is dramatic. Sweeter, nuttier, genuinely good. Dig too early, and you'll wonder what the appeal even is. Sunchokes handle USDA zones 4 through 9 without issue, and honestly, that range barely matters. Once established, this plant isn't going anywhere on its own, in almost any climate. The downside? Leave even one small piece of tuber in the ground at harvest, and you'll have a new plant there next spring, whether you planted it or not. Left unchecked, sunchokes spread aggressively through a bed. Give them their own dedicated space, ideally with a buried barrier around the edges, or grow them in a deep container instead. Next is a root so determined to survive that even a tiny fragment left behind in the soil is enough to start the whole thing over. Number 5, horseradish. The root that refuses to stay dead. Horseradish has a reputation for being nearly indestructible, and once you've grown it, you understand why. It's a relative of broccoli and cabbage, but instead of putting energy into something you eat off a stalk, it channels everything into one thick, pungent taproot underground. To plant it, you take root cuttings, pieces about 12 inches long, and set them at a 45-degree angle, with the flat-cut top end buried roughly 3 inches deep. From there, it mostly takes care of itself. It wants deep, loose soil free of rocks, but beyond that, it asks for very little. Harvest happens in late fall after frost, or early spring before new growth kicks in, both points when the root's flavor is at its sharpest and most concentrated. Grate or crush that. Root fresh, and the sharp sinus-clearing bite shows up almost instantly, the same family of compounds that gives mustard and wasabi their punch. Here is the one critical detail. Horseradish can regrow from a piece of root the size of your fingertip. When you harvest, dig carefully and pull every fragment you can find, because anything left behind becomes next year's plant, in a spot you never chose. Most growers either dedicate an isolated bed to it, sink a barrier 12 to 18 inches deep around the planting area, or grow it in large containers to keep it fully contained. Horseradish grows across USDA zones 3 through 9, which covers nearly every climate where people garden seriously. The downside? Left unmanaged, it will spread into and overwhelm nearby beds. But contained properly, it's one of the lowest effort, longest lasting crops on this entire list. Decades of harvests from cuttings you took exactly once. Next is a plant that doesn't just grow in your garden, it walks across it. Number 6, the Egyptian walking onion, the vegetable that plants itself. This is one of the strangest plants on this list, and also one of the most fun to watch. Instead of flowers, it grows clusters of small bulbs, called topsets, at the very top of its stalks. As those clusters grow heavier through the season, the stalks can't hold the weight anymore, and they slowly bend over until the bulbs touch the ground. And then those bulbs root right where they land and grow into brand new plants. Year after year, the plant slowly relocates itself across the bed, which is exactly how it earned its name. To get started, plant the top-set bulbils in autumn, water them in well, and let them sit through winter undisturbed. Beyond that, it wants average, well-drained garden soil and full sun, and it needs almost no compost or fertilizer to keep producing. Here is the one critical detail. Every part of this plant is edible, and each part is ready at a different time of year. In spring, the green stalks can be harvested and used exactly like scallions. By late summer, both the topset bulbils and the underground bulbs are ready to harvest and store. Walking onions handle USDA zones 3 through 10, an enormous range that covers almost the entire country, from cold winters to mild ones. The downside? It walks. Left alone for a few years, your onion patch won't be where you originally planted it. It'll have crept several feet in whatever direction the stalks happen to fall. If you want it contained, harvest the top set bulbils each season instead of letting all of them root. Next is a leafy green that thrives on neglect and turns into a problem the moment you try to be nice to it. Number 7, sorrel. The green that does better the worse you treat it. Sorrel is one of the earliest leafy greens to show up in spring, with a sharp lemony bite that's almost shocking the first time you taste it raw off the plant. It's been grown for that exact flavor for a very long time, prized specifically because it shows up early, when almost nothing else in the garden is ready yet. What makes sorrel unusual is where it actually thrives. It does best in poor, acidic soil, the kind of ground where most vegetables struggle and sulk. Give it full sun to partial shade, and it establishes easily from seed, or by dividing an existing crown. Harvesting is simple. Pick the young outer leaves continuously through spring and summer. Regular picking does two things at once. It keeps the leaves tender and mild, and it stops the plant from bolting and going to seed too early. That sharp, lemony note comes from natural plant acids, and in small amounts, a few chopped leaves can brighten soups, sauces, and salads in a way few other greens manage. Here is the one critical detail. If you plant sorrel in rich, compost-heavy soil, thinking you're helping it, you'll get the opposite of what you want. Instead of staying compact and manageable, it explodes into aggressive growth that you'll be cutting back constantly just to keep in bounds. The poorer the soil, the better behaved this plant actually is. Sorrel grows across USDA zones 4 through 9, handling everything from cold winters to warm summers without much fuss. The downside? In soil that's too rich, it becomes a constant cutting back chore. But planted where nothing else wants to grow, it becomes one of the easiest, earliest harvests of your entire year. Next is the plant that rewards you for being a little ruthless with the scissors. Number 8, chives. The plant that gets better the more you cut it. Chives are about as low drama as a perennial gets. They form neat, grass-like clumps just 1 to 2 feet tall, and they're equally happy in full sun, partial shade, garden borders, or a pot on a windowsill. There's almost no setting where chives don't work. Here's the mechanism that makes them so easy to keep harvesting. Every time you snip the leaves, the plant responds by growing back faster and denser. The more you use it, the more it gives you back. There's no resting period, no waiting for the right time. Just snip what you need, whenever you need it. In early summer, chives send up small purple flower clusters that pollinators love, especially bees. The blooms aren't just decoration either. Pull the petals apart and scatter a few over a salad for a mild onion flavor and a bit of color. It's a nice bonus for the garden, but it comes with a catch. Here is the one critical detail. Those pretty purple blooms turn into seeds fast, and chives will self-seed aggressively if you let them go. If you don't want chive seedlings popping up across your whole bed next year, snip the flower heads off as soon as they fade, before they ever go to seed. Chives are reliable across USDA zones 3 through 9, which covers the vast majority of home gardens in the country. The downside: over time the root clump gets congested from the inside, which slows production down. Every 3 to 4 years in fall, dig up the clump, split it into smaller sections, and replant. It takes about 10 minutes and resets the plant for years of strong growth. Next is the one plant on this list that actually wants the kind of soil most gardeners would throw away. Number 9. Blueberries, the shrub that wants the soil everything else hates. Blueberries aren't technically a vegetable, but in a perennial food garden, they earn their spot. They're the bridge layer, the plant that fills the gap between tall fruit trees overhead and the low-growing crops at ground level, and they do it for decades from a single planting. Here's what makes them different from almost everything else on this list. Most plants want rich, fertile soil. Blueberries want close to the opposite: acidic, shallow, gravelly, nutrient-poor ground. A soil pH somewhere between 5.5 and 6.5 is the range to aim for. If your soil is naturally rich and closer to neutral, blueberries will actually struggle in it, no matter how well you otherwise care for them. Once established from young bare root shrubs, blueberries need surprisingly little from you. No annual replanting, no yearly soil overhaul, just sun and the right pH maintained over time. Here is the one critical detail: that acidity doesn't maintain itself. Over the years, soil naturally drifts back toward neutral, and if the pH climbs too high, your blueberry bushes will slowly decline. Yellowing leaves, weaker fruit, eventual dieback. The fix is simple and ongoing. Mulch regularly with pine needles, peat moss, or sulfur-treated wood chips. That one habit keeps the soil exactly where blueberries need it, year after year. Blueberries grow well across USDA zones 3 through 8. Cold winters aren't a problem for them at all. In fact, most varieties need a real stretch of winter chill every year to set fruit properly, so the cold that wrecks other crops actually works in their favor here. The downside? Ignore the soil pH, and this plant will quietly fail on you over several years, even while looking fine at first. But maintain that acidity, and you've got a fruiting shrub that will outlast nearly everything else in your garden. That's 9 plants that take your garden off the yearly reset, for good. None of them made this list because they're trendy. They made it because once they're in the ground, they keep going, with less from you every year, not more. Something is up and growing before your annual seeds even sprout. Something is multiplying itself without another trip to buy seed. Most gardeners ask what's easiest to plant this year. The ones who stop replanting every spring ask something different. What will still be feeding them 10 years from now, with no extra effort? Once your garden runs on plants like these, it stops being a yearly project and starts being something that just keeps giving. If this changed how you look at your garden, hit subscribe,